General Bishwajit Bhattacharya joining in to understand the legalities at play here. Thank you for joining in, sir. In your opinion, why the need for an ordinance now?
You see, under Section 26, Subclause 1 of the Reserve Bank of India Act, that the bank note shall be a legal tender at any place in India, and it shall be guaranteed by the central government. So anybody who is holding the, cancelled 500 and 1,000 rupee notes, he has to get back the value because it is guaranteed by the central government. So the liability is jointly and severally with Reserve Bank of India and central government because Reserve Bank of India is owned by the central government. Now the cancellation of the legal tender under Section 26 Subclause 2 does not extinguish the liability of the central government to pay to the holder of the cancelled tender. That has to be paid. The Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji announced categorically, which you just now displayed, on 8th of November at 8 p.m., that up to 31st of March, time has been given to every person who is holding the cancelled legal tender of 500 and 1,000 rupee notes to deposit in Reserve Bank of India and in exchange get something returned. Now, when a legal tender has been guaranteed jointly and severally by the Reserve Bank of India and the central government, the Government of India or the Reserve Bank of India cannot renege from its liability and responsibility as per the statute of the Reserve Bank of India under Section 26 of Clause 1.
Got that point, sir. Got that point very, very clearly, that in order to extinguish the liability that right now lies with the RBI, with the central government, you need to amend the law. But the second question, why now? Why this timing? Why not, kickstart the demonetization process and extinguish that liability right on November 8th?
You see, possibly, if I may be permitted to hazard a pure speculation and guess, perhaps since the budget process has been, preponed to 1st of February, the government is perhaps trying to compel the holders of the cancelled tender to deposit the funds within the 30th of December so that they may get a realistic picture that out of 15,44,000 crores of cancelled tender, how much comes back. So that, the government can basically project as to how much of windfall gain or windfall liability. When I say gain, means any funds which is short of 15.44 lakh crores is basically a windfall gain, and in excess will be a windfall liability, so that it will ease out the budget making process. So in my humble and respectful view and submission to the viewers of your channel, may I just say that the liability of the central government having given guarantee to this cancelled legal tenders cannot be extinguished. You can fix a date up to 31st of March, or maybe, it can be June or it can be February or January. That is a matter of subjective satisfaction of the executive government, which is again amenable to judicial review. But I personally feel that this particular decision has been taken just to get a realistic picture on, because, the scheme was announced on 8th of...
Mr. Bhattacharya, sorry to interrupt you. This is Sapna joining in from the CNBC studios from Delhi. So, in fact, this was a story that has been flagged up by CNBC TV18 a number of times, that even on earlier occasions, the amount of money that was coming back into the banking system, in fact, the last reporting that we did was that, probably over 14 lakh crores already come in, and 15.4 is what the base if we assume that. So could that be also one of the major reasons why an ordinance is required to basically try and extinguish this liability legally so that it doesn't become an excessive liability? Basically, that's the same point that you're trying to make?
No, the extinguishing of liability cannot happen in terms of Section 26, subclause 1 of the Reserve Bank of India Act, because it is guaranteed by the central government. Guarantee of the central government. No, madam, may I just, with all due respect to you and to your viewers, may I just say that the guarantee of the central government, which is explicitly and specifically stated by the Parliament by virtue of Section 26, subclause 1 of the Reserve Bank of India, cannot be extinguished. They may fix up a date. By this date, you have to do it. Now, that date, whichever date the executive government fixed, that can be amenable to judicial, scrutiny. But of course, a date has to be fixed. Now, whether that date, which is 30th of December or 31st of March, as Honorable Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi has stated, that can be a subject matter of judicial review. It can't be arbitrary. The government can't be, arbitrary in its exercise of powers, because those who are holding currencies of, cancelled tender, the word is cease to be a legal tender. If you kindly carefully use the words of Section 26, subclause 2 of the Reserve Bank of India Act, shall cease to be a legal tender. Now, shall cease to be a legal tender does not extinguish ipso facto under the law the liability of the central government.
Got that point, sir. Got that point, that to extinguish the currency and to extinguish the liability, you need to amend the law. I got that point, sir. But coming back to what you were saying about the possibility of either a windfall gain or a windfall liability. If, deposits in excess of 15.4 lakh crores come in, then there is a liability. If it is below that threshold, then my question, is it really a windfall gain? And if yes, for whom? We were just speaking to a former deputy governor of the Reserve Bank of India, who told us categorically that if there is this shortfall, it simply can't be transferred to the central government in the form of a special dividend. And the current governor, the RBI governor, Dr. Patel, has said that as of now, the RBI wasn't thinking of a dividend. What is the legal process, sir? Does the central government stand to gain anything if the entire 15.44 lakh crores does not come back in?
Madam, I am perhaps sanguine that central government perhaps hope that much less than 15.44 crores will be plowed back to the banking system. Fortunately or unfortunately, I can't say that has not, happened. Now, if anything less than 15.44 crores are plowed back to the central government, that extinguishes the liability of the central government and Reserve Bank of India. Okay, but that does not. This is basically an accounting exercise. Now, when liability of the Reserve Bank of India is sort of diminished, that does not necessarily mean that you have to transfer it to the central government, as the present RBI governor, Shri Bishwajit Patel, perhaps has correctly stated. But, you should bolster the revenue by means of enhanced production, enhanced growth, enhanced collection of direct and indirect taxes, and not by virtue of the accounting exercise.
No, we get that point, Mr. Bhattacharya. Very quickly, we haven't been able to confirm if a penalty could be included as a part of the ordinance. But would that make sense to impose a penalty for persons holding an X amount of the old currency? Would it make sense for that to be included in an ordinance? Could that have also been a reason? Again, we haven't confirmed that, but could that have been a reason for the ordinance also being pushed? Very quickly, sir.
Madam, can you just make your question a little brief? I have not understood.
Does it make sense for a penalty to be imposed on persons holding the old currency?
No. In my view, that if you are holding some old rather cancelled currency notes of 500 and 1,000 rupees beyond 30th of December, and if some penalty is imposed, that is sure to be struck down by any court.
Yeah.
Either if 500 or 1,000 rupee note, if you can burn it or throw it in river Ganges, And instead of doing that, if somebody catches you with some old notes and to sort of punish and sort of penalize him is most arbitrary and unfair in my respectful view.
Well,
I personally feel to penalize any person who is still holding 500 and 1,000 rupee currency notes, which has been guaranteed by the central government under Section 26(1) of the Reserve Bank of India. I can understand if you can impose tax and you say it's black money, so therefore you pay tax, you pay penalty, you pay interest, you prosecute him, and that's a different issue. That's a proceedings under the Income Tax Act.
Well, sir, I suppose we have some very interesting 24 to 48 hours ahead of us. I think some of these questions will be answered once we see that ordinance, if it does actually come through. Thank you for joining in. Appreciate your presence. Time for a break now, but coming up on what